Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Coast to Coast Traders Podcast. I'm Flexing Joe.
And I'm Robbie.
What's up, Robbie? How you doing?
Pretty good, man. I got some gardening work done this weekend. I
Solid.
almost didn't, but Ashley reminded me that I mentioned that I would want to do that. So we went out and did some yard work earlier. Week was pretty good. How about yours?
Pretty good, dude. Actually, the wife treated me to brunch today, which was awesome. And we had they served us like a side of bacon in like a mason jar. It was pretty funny.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that was good, and just did some stuff around the house and just enjoying some time off before going back to work tomorrow. So cool, man. How was your trading week?
It was a little bit rough. I had to kind of put my ego aside
Mm-hmm.
and switch from minis to micros. You know, we talked about last Friday with the market being so volatile that maybe we need a little bit of a bigger risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the real reason to kick it off was a trade I took on the 11th,
Okay, yeah, let's
where I
get
had
into it.
literally bottom ticked it, and I went long.
Yep.
And for my typical brackets, I have a 10-point stop and a 15-point take profit.
Yeah, here we go. This was brutal.
So yeah, so what happened was initially I had set my bid on that first red candle, your first gray candle, and I had put the wick or the bid near the bottom, but on the next candle it didn't fill, and I had kind of hesitated pushing it back up,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously it moved. So when it came back down again, I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll put my bid on that green candle wick instead.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys can see on Joe's chart there, the green arrow was my entry at 488.75,
Mm-hmm.
and I bottom ticked the stop for 78.75, and that sucker
Literally.
ran. It ran like 50 to 60 points, from my entry.
Literally the low, the exact low. Like when he says
Yeah.
he bottom ticked it, and not in a good way. Yeah, shit,
Yep.
dude. Did you take any? Did you have any consideration or thoughts about re-entering or trying again over here?
Uh, I probably did, but I don't actually have those notes in front of me right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I probably should have maybe thought about those to talk about too. But mostly, I just wanted to mention it as like my disappointment of the week.
Yeah. This was the
Uh,
this was the Jolts job report day. I remember this because like here's the Jolts candle, and it went
mhm.
crazy. It baked out over the high, and then it went and broke the lows, and then came back up when we started trailing off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was rough.
Yeah.
Um, and so what happened there was I decided, from that point forward, you know what, I think I will go ahead and try switching to 5 micros
Mm-hmm.
and just opening up my stop to 20 points with a 30-point target instead of 15 points. So that way it's the same dollars.
Yep.
And that worked out um, decently well for me.
Yeah.
But funny enough, there were several trades, even with the micros where I took entry and it didn't really come back to me 10 points.
Mm,
And specifically on Friday, uh, I went long here. We were a little bit bearish in the pre-market because EMAs had crossed and were pushing down, but we were, bigger picture, I felt bullish, and we were near yesterday or Thursday's belly button area.
right. Yep. Right.
And so, I knew we were still above VWAP, so I was like, well, okay, let's see, off the open what happens if we push under VWAP, then it's probably going to be a short situation.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't even tap VWAP and it pushed back up. Strong displacement on the 1 minute over that mini or that micro pivot, and then on the second candle there, I bought the pull. So that the candle closes the wick, and I had attempted to market buy the close of that candle.
Mm-hmm.
But, possibly my slow reaction time or just with a little bit of slippage, I didn't get the best fill, but I did enter 499.5
Mm-hmm.
with 5 micros, and then I, just let my brackets do the work, and I took profit at 529.50 for 30 points there.
Oh
And
yeah.
so just like you talked about, like because it's so volatile, the spreads are so huge, like with micros, you can make the same kind of money as well. At least I'm making similar money as I was with minis,
Yep.
just because we're getting so much more range on these candles.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And you only took about, only pulled back against you about 8 points. And then you clocked it in at 30. You locked up all 5 cons. And then, this was, you had for sure the right idea because it went 100 from your entry, So very,
Yeah,
very, very good
that's the
trade.
bittersweet part, obviously, right? Because you hate to see that, but we've talked about this before on previous episodes. We're like, hey, my rules are my rules. I have to take my base hit if it's on the first trade, even if it runs. And in the past, I've sometimes given myself some wiggle room where, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, maybe I'll do 20 points, but that thought didn't really cross my mind on this particular trade. But in hindsight, of course, when it went 100, it's like, yeah, I could have done that. But it is what it is, and it was still a pretty great day anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. For sure. For sure. For sure.
Hmm.
Very good. Very good. This makes me like just thinking about this, these NQ trades and stuff, right? And like, everybody kind of having this ego about not wanting to size down and take MNQ. I
Yeah.
think it's because a lot of people are just trying to like hit these massive trades and they just want to be like some of the people they see online. Like who Trader Kane is?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know out there, guys, Trader Kane is probably got the biggest, unconfirmed, but for sure, it seems like the biggest prop firm payout of all time at like $1.9 million. So absolutely crazy. This was back in September. Apex paid him out, right? Which, that in and of itself is a shock.
Yep.
But the kind of he obviously had 20 accounts. So he got like 90K from each account, or whatever, or 96K, and that was pretty insane. But the funny part about him now is after they paid him out, right? He did a podcast on the words of wisdom, so you guys could check that out. But they paid him out and they froze his account, so now he can't log in to his frozen account to unsubscribe from the Apex emails. So he keeps getting all the Apex emails, which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, I saw him post about that. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he said something like, "No hard feelings. I want to subscribe." So
Yep.
I don't actually know the situation about why his accounts are frozen. But do you know anything about that actually, or?
No, basically all he said when he was on the podcast was that um, Apex contacted him or whatever, and like basically said they froze his accounts and they were going to pay him out, and they, a couple days went by or whatever, and all of a sudden he said he opened up his bank account and it looked like a phone number because they paid him a 7-digit
Yeah.
number, right? Nearly $2 million, and they
Mhm.
just froze his accounts and he's not able to log in or trade, and that's it.
I remember a similar story on the Words of Wisdom podcast, where this guy was forex trader, and I don't remember the name because this was last year,
Mm,
but it was a situation also with Apex where they were like willing to pay him out, but they also weren't going to let him. They weren't going to let him continue to trade with them anymore. So I
yeah.
find it interesting. Like, this is, I guess, the second time we've encountered that. I don't know what the circumstances are. I kind of wish that Apex would be transparent about why they do that, because obviously these guys are successful traders. So, like, is
Mm.
it because they never really had moved them to the live markets or what? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's definitely very odd because if he's obviously he's a very talented trader,
Yeah.
but it's like, well, what if he's a talented trader, then like why aren't you just going to copy his trades, right? Like he obviously had an extended period of success.
Yeah, for sure. But um, replication and copying doesn't yield success. So, like,
Mm,
you can see this in a lot of different spaces. Whether it's in gaming, you're watching a Twitch streamer, they're good at shooters and stuff. You'll see a lot of people in chat asking, "Hey, what's your config?
right.
What mouse do you use?" and all that kind of stuff. Or in photography, what camera are you using? And of course, with trading, of course, it's like, what indicators do you use? What's your risk? And this and that. It's like, you can have the
Mm,
recipe, but you can't actually succeed with just the recipe alone. Like, I know for sure, like, if I had a the most expensive camera in the world, my picture would be pretty basic compared to a professional that would just use like a disposable camera.
right.
So
Right.
we want to copy the greats, but it's more than just having to, like, what's your risk, what are your indicators, because
Right.
there's a lot to learn about when the market's live and in front of the chart, executing is a whole different story versus just knowing what the indicators were and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I think it's just like Apex. Obviously, they're the company, so they know exactly all of his trades, so they could be using them to replicate them in the live market, and then be paying him from the live market, which would still be lucrative for them because he's over the threshold. So like at that point, they've paid him so much, they would keep not they would pay him 90%. They still keep 10%. They would actually be up off of letting him to continue trade. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like that's iffy, right? Like I don't understand why they wouldn't just be replicating that in the live market across multiple accounts, right? Like
Yeah,
unless
sure.
just because the dude is trading like so many cons across so many accounts, they just
Hmm.
they feel like that those orders would not be able to be replicated for some reason. I don't know. Either that or they just don't actually really want to trade the live market, and it's everybody's on sim. They're going to keep people on sim,
Yeah, but that's it's just so strange though because you have all these consistency rules and like
hmm
I'd have to imagine, you know, and obviously I could be wrong, but I'd have to imagine that he doesn't trade the same strategy every day
mm,
and maybe not the same size every day either. And over the last few months, many months, we've heard stories time and time again of Apex people not getting paid out and stuff, and you of course included in that.
hmm
And I don't know. I just wish these prop companies were more transparent with the rules about, and then specifically when they deny somebody, instead of hiding behind ambiguous terms
mm,
that are just like so broad and generic that kind of just give them the leeway to do whatever they want. It's like, okay, I mean, I understand it's their firm, their rules. Pray I don't alter the deal further.
right.
But I would just like to know, right?
Yeah, I would like to know too, for sure too, because it just doesn't seem. It's very much so like it's one thing, and then hey, we have these rules or these stipulations, and then we're going to execute and follow through on something completely different. So,
Yeah.
definitely not something to really get your hopes up on when it comes to trading and then getting like massive payouts. And like back to your comment about replication not yielding success, I'm sure that
Hmm.
just for anybody watching this, you can't just go learn what he's doing and then expect to replicate the same results, right? Like if you watch that podcast with him, he exuded a level of calm, like I really don't care what happens in the trade. And
Hmm.
then of course, like I was watching that and I was just like, wow. And then of course, like, well, why is he like that? Or why can he afford to be like that? It's because he also runs a room. So, if you have revenue stream coming in from running a room and teaching other people how to trade, like if you're trading on prop and you're just like, I don't really care what the outcome is of this trade, like you're good. And then
Yeah.
like to get a $1.9 million payout, there's got to be a big part of you that's just like, how is this even possible? So now when you risk 10K on a trade, you're just like, whatever happens, happens. I got 1.9 million I wasn't counting on, or whatever, right? So you can't,
Yeah.
there are so many things that go into the whole trading, the whole sphere of it, right? Like the whole, between the mindset and the risk management and everything. You can't just expect to do what Kane's doing and have the same success, right? Or anybody else. You can't just follow. You can't. That's where Robbie's really getting at with the replication doesn't yield success. You know.
Yeah, and we a lot of us have probably seen the concept of the success iceberg, where it's like,
Mm.
just the tip of I don't know what the real stat is, but like supposedly only like the 1% of the iceberg is visible above the surface, and the rest
Hmm.
of it is just a massive chunk of ice beneath. But we have success on top, and people think that maybe success is just like your indicator and like your risk to reward. But it's the hard work, the persistence, the late night,
Yeah.
early mornings, the discipline, criticism, doubt, failure, risks. I mean, yeah, it's all
Yep.
right there.
Yep.
And
And it
there's
can
just
be
so
and it
much
can be
behind it.
yours. And it can be yours for 14.90 and free shipping if you have Prime.
Yeah, Amazon is linking them. No, I'm just kidding.
I was worried. I was like, man, is this thing? I'm gonna like dox myself, but I'm not signed in, so this is not
Oh,
me.
good,
Yep.
good.
But for 14.90, it's for 14.90. The visual of success can be yours.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, uh, can't just copy the basics. We still got
Mm.
to put in the screen time.
Yep.
and you do the work to get to that place of success. Success varies from one person to another,
Yep.
and everybody's going to have different milestones and definitions of what success means. And along the way, there will be small successes that lead to an ultimate goal. But I think a lot of us want to push the goal, as we get there, and see what continue to push ourselves. Certainly in trading, we want to make more money, but in fitness, you hit that first milestone. Next time
Yeah.
around, you want to push it, kick it down the road, and lift more, do more reps, or whatever, or lose more weight, or whatever it is.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. All right, bro. So we have a big week ahead of us with FOMC on Wednesday. So everybody's really curious what they're going to do there.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a big news week this past week too, because we had Jolts on Tuesday, we had CPI on Wednesday, we had PPI on Thursday, and then we had University of Michigan consumer sentiment on Friday. So two were during the market at 10 a.m. and the other two were at 8:30.
Yeah.
And I think the big takeaway that I would have is that, like, CPI and PPI were, for all intents and purposes, good news, with inflation coming in lower. But like, even with that, look how you can see how CPI rejected where Friday's low of day was. So CPI pushed into it, rejected, more than half of that candle is a wick. And then during the live market, we couldn't break. Well, not live market. I mean, the whole thing's live. But during the New York session, we couldn't break over that, and then we ended up like pulling back down, basically to the session low before just like chopping into the close. Basically, close the day out as a doji.
Yeah, I was hopeful for
No.
a long continuation over that, but like you said, we didn't close over that news candle,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing happened on PPI.
Yeah.
Although the difference in pre-market was that that news candle didn't make a higher high
Mm-hmm.
versus on CPI it did.
Right. Exactly.
But having that in perspective, it's like, okay, this looks just like the other day, and the other day we sold off. That was a great day to take a short.
Yeah, that was a great data too. When it pushed back up here on PPI and it pushed back into the Newsweek high, you had the same exact setup and look. Just in pre-market, it just took a little bit longer, and then it faded right off the open. And from the open to the orb low was 234 points. Yep, that was a really solid trade. Speaking of orb, though, there were a few, or actually very good orb setups this week.
Yeah,
right?
just like we talked about on Friday, huh?
Yeah, for sure. So like Friday's a good example of the like fake out breakout. They wick under the orb twice. They can't close anything under here. If I'm not mistaken, on Friday's, like, let's go like a 2-minute chart. On Friday's 2-minute chart, yeah, they didn't even close a candle under VWAP until over here, and then they were just still all sitting in these wicks.
Yeah, and they're pretty much holding the opening print there.
Yep.
Like nothing even close under that print either. So that's pretty strong confluence too.
Yep. So there was a lot there to tell you that, like, hey, we can't move under the orb. We're not breaking low of day. Sorry, we're not breaking low of day and holding it with any sense of strength from the bears. And this is actually, like, I hopped on voice, with Maple in the House of Stacks for just a couple quick seconds and just said, like, the chart moved down off of that news and then it got bought up. And at a certain point, kind of like bad news is gonna end up being bullish as it switches to being enough to potentially sway the Fed at the FOMC meetings to cut rates, if not cut rates sooner, right? And that's what that's also too what Trump keeps talking about, is that the Fed should cut rates. The Fed should cut rates, as there's a whole dynamic there. But it just moved, and that's what I said. I said, look how it moved low like this, and look how it got bought back up, and then look how the next candle. I mean, it ripped. Like, this is, again, if you see a very large move, you can't just chase it and short the whole here, because you got wrecked, like absolutely wrecked. And 449 to like 580s in 6 minutes. Ouch.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty insane there, huh?
And then there were a few bases up here too off of the orb high weren't too bad either. Remember we talked about that wick. That was what you were bringing up when we talked about this.
Yeah, so like on that day, if we had drawn like a 5-minute supply and demand just from like the first opening candle wick, and you just drew that from the body of the 5-minute candle and then the low, That was only that was like 12-ish points
Which
from the opening print. So the opening
oh
candle,
yep
yeah,
down
down there.
here.
But you could have done it at the top too.
Yeah, when we make the
So
orb low and the orb high, if you look that wick there, you're right. And then
yeah.
even just like this one up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
Really
so
solid.
like both of those it's the same kind of thing. So like we had the orb level set up, but just like we talked about, when the orb is set with wicks,
Mm.
when it came back down to retest, when did it actually respect that exact orb high level? It didn't really until much later, and that's another thing we talked about. Yeah, the first time we'll probably be basing on the bodies rather than the level, and then
Hmm.
maybe the second time or further tests would be on the level itself.
That's right. That's right. You told
Yeah,
him, bro. You told him.
we did.
Hell yeah.
All right, here, bed podcast.
What blah 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 blah. The blah blah
Best
blah.
podcast in 2 continents,
In
baby.
2 continents, and one of them's Antarctica.
Yep.
Uh, yo, hey, speaking of, man, it's still cold up here though. Actually, today was like the warmest day we had in a while. It was like 58 degrees.
Ah,
So
that's
nice, dude.
that's nice for you, but like today, I'm wearing this and like it's California cold. It's 69 in the room.
What the heck, dude? No way, dude. Honestly, like I like drive around and I'm like, look, all the snow is melting, spring is coming, nature is healing.
Hmm.
I just can't wait.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, they're already selling wet or swimsuits at Costco the other day.
hell
We got spring
yeah,
coming here, so people are going to be hitting the beach pretty soon.
hell yeah, dude. I can't wait for summer. Especially just being by the pool and just chilling. So yeah, man, you know, like we talked about on the last podcast about the orb strat, this was really good. And you know how we talked about like different orb strats, like some people use a 5 minute or a 15 minute, right? So like
Yeah.
if you used and I'm just going to I'll clear off some drawings like your trade. I'm going to delete your trade off of Friday. But if you use so the 5 or the 15 would still have the same low. If you use the 5 minute high wick, look at this. Like here, obviously this was where right before the news, so you wouldn't be doing anything off of this here. They flush under it, but then like look how they should have break over it here, and then they start basing it, and then they get one more tap in here, and it finally goes. So that was great off of the 5. And then if you look at the first 15, 5, 10, 15 to be these 3 candles, look at this wick high here.
Yeah.
And that was where the first like real good low was there for that move. And if you snagged an entry in here, watching it chop around and just being patient, say, all right, even if you put your entry at the top of the box, risking the bottom, that was a 20-point risk. And from here at 6:02, in just about 30 minutes, half hour, you got just about 100-point trade.
Yeah, fantastic. And you had great EMA confluence there too. So
Exactly.
multiple things working in your favor there.
Exactly. Yep. And there was a little micro pivot here to enter just above the orb. So that was really good for Friday. And then it's honestly, orb high rejection here and then you flush under VWAP where you're likely to go back to orb low, and it took you there, right? So this was another fake out under orb low as well. So the orb was good this week. She was good to us.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else do we got here?
We want to talk about back adjusting, right?
Oh yeah. So we gapped up like what, 200-ish points today?
Yeah, let's see. From the settlement price, we closed at 667 right here, and then we opened 218 points higher. Yeah, damn.
Yeah.
That's a big gap.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big gap.
And for your observation, we bounced off of
Friday's low day.
Friday's low a day.
Yep, last Friday, which is also the CPI high, so it's a double confluence there.
Now, in the bounce though, is that
Monday's orb low.
That's on the adjusted price though, right? That we bounced because we didn't quite touch yesterday. We didn't quite touch yesterday's high on unadjusted.
Yeah, this is my chart is unadjusted. I don't adjust.
Yeah.
So the reason I don't adjust is very simple, right? Like if you look at like QQQ or SPY, like they don't make an adjustment. That's the first thing. And then secondly, because I've spent a lot of time looking at like these gaps that we make from when a new contract comes, and those
Yeah.
gap levels end up being quite important. And then when you back adjust, it just skews all of your old drawings, all the old levels to being different prices than they previously were. So like, why would you, so that's another reason, like, why would you adjust your levels like that, like automatically, and lose all of that information? And then
That's the main
lastly,
reason for me.
yep. And then I'm going to clear this drawing set completely. So like, I'm just going to mark it so we don't lose it. Just mark this gap out, like, go. I just want to put it like, boom. Okay. So like, if you back adjust the chart, and I'll mark another level too. So like the high is like right here. And anything else I need to mark? I don't think so. So then like, if you go to futures, adjust for contract changes, hit apply. Why did it not? It did not change anything. Did you see that?
Is that because on the daily it automatically doesn't adjust anyway?
It doesn't adjust on the. It doesn't adjust on the weekly.
Oh, okay.
That's what I wanted to show.
I did remember there was a quirk in that way.
It's weird. It's like not doing anything. Interesting.
Yeah, let me double check on mine.
Can't get this to replicate what I'm trying to show you guys. Futures, adjust for contract changes.
Yeah, so on the daily for me, when I adjust for contract changes, the high of this session was 885.5, so it would be the close of Friday's daily candle.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me adjust it, bro. What did you do?
Yeah.
How did we break this?
I'm not sure. I just on the daily. And yeah, I'm just on the daily chart.
That's so weird. It won't let mine adjust.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason, guys. It's quirky.
It's super quirky.
But the main one is just having all of your drawings invalidated. And when I was first new to futures, I was like flabbergasted when we gapped up because I had forgotten that there were contract changes, just like options have expirations and stuff. But I was like, why is there this massive gap on my chart on Thinkorswim, but there wasn't in the trading platform that I was using at the time, that for prop trading? And obviously I learned that's why that is. And so when I was interested in back adjusting on Thinkorswim, I realized that all my levels were pretty much trash, and they're still very reliable levels, I feel, to have. Like, I wouldn't want to lose them. Like, obviously there's times when I'm going to start deleting levels and zones and stuff that have been interacted with too many times. But I just think that it's too important to back adjust. Like, I don't want to back adjust is what I'm saying.
Dude, I
there
think,
you go.
I think TOS is not recognizing a contract change on NQ because this just worked on ES, and on NQ it's not letting me flip. So the reason being though is like, here's the actual gap, right? And so it just pulled all the other prices like up to it, right? And so we're not like, if I go to, I'll put this chart on ES as well. I want to be able to like quickly flip back and forth. Come on, baby. Okay, so here's the unadjusted chart. Here's the adjusted chart. You see how they look grossly different. The unadjusted chart is showing a lower high. This is like pulled this up higher now to like a higher number when you back adjust, which is weird. But then also, if you go back to the weekly chart, see, the weekly chart doesn't adjust. That's the quirky thing. And so that when I figured that out in conjunction with like the other stuff that I said about QQQ and SPY not adjusting, and just how it distorts all of your old levels on a weekly or higher time frame, there is no adjustment for it. It just is. And so that's why I don't back adjust. But to each their own. I know a lot of people like to back adjust because other popular traders, they back adjust. So it's like the same thing, like Replication doesn't always yield success. Like, you got to do what you feel like is best for you. I don't back adjust, and I find a lot of confluence in it. So you got to try both ways and see what you like.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because like there are those interesting situations where if you do adjust, then you're gonna find some levels, but it's just like I don't know how, like, for me it just doesn't seem very repeatable because I don't understand um like the math or anything about how the adjustment works, right? How they
Hmm.
come to the conclusion of what the price should be. So for me, it just makes sense. You know, the price is what it was, and it makes sense that you have a new contract. If you're trading options, you're not going to plot the next expiration based on the last expiration or something like that, right?
Right, right, right.
Because IV
Exactly.
and everything's gonna be totally different. So it's just like, yeah, just treat it at, you know, just for face value. I like to see the gaps just like you do, and the previous highs and lows and everything else just as they were.
Yeah, there we go. I got it to work now. I got it to work now so we can see what it looks like on NQ. So this one is adjusted. This one is unadjusted. So
And look at your previous high, which is now a double top, whereas before it was a lower high.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's still lower high, but like you know, it didn't interact with last time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's a big difference. It's a big difference. I prefer to have it unadjusted. If you look at it unadjusted as well, I know you know he's an internet personality, we put him that way, but Bananas 325 SMA is like right where we are on the
Hmm.
unadjusted chart, and look how we knifed through it. And he's been beating the table about that SMA for too long, so I put it on my charts, and I mean there's a lot of times where it does add confluence, so I have to say there's something there, right?
Yeah, but then again, he has also been calling the bottom, I think, for a couple of weeks now.
At least a solid like probably 5-6 days. So
Yeah.
let's go back. I think if he was calling the bottom on Monday, like when we had
Hmm.
this long wick, well, we gapped down and that negated quick. So he would have been calling the bottom about. I mean, we're still about 400 or 500 points away from where he said that he thought that was in.
Yeah.
So that was
I'm
quite the
sure his
dip.
calls are doing just fine.
Yeah, man, he buys time. You just gotta. If you buy enough time, you can never be wrong on calls.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not advice, guys. Don't do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Just anecdotally, I guess I saw SMB Capital talking about an interesting way to do a call spread,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget the exact term they use, but is you sell a credit spread, but then you buy a call to go with it, and the credit spread pays for the call, and if you get enough time, you know, your credit spread is worthless, right? But then you have an exponential win rate, or not win rate, but you know, risk to reward on the regular call. But you know, we're talking many months out. So and the margin requirement, or at the very least, the cash requirement to put on such a trade was in like the 20-ish thousand range. So that's
Oh,
not
sheesh.
very not suitable for most people, I would say.
What do you mean, dude?
At the very least, most new traders.
What do you mean most people? I think most of our listeners are probably prepared to go out and buy 5-6 cons right now. I think
Well,
that
I mean,
I think
if
that's our
you're YOLO,
demographic.
then why don't you mortgage the house and go out 3x on
Yeah.
margin?
Yeah. Yeah. See,
That sounds like a smart plan.
that's our demographic right there. That's the people who are listening to this. They're like, yes, yes, I'm looking to mortgage the house on a play. That
Listen, if you make it on Wall Street bets, come back to us and post in the comments,
hell
and
yeah.
then we'll buy you a prop account.
Dude, I feel like we're coming full circle on this because obviously, guys, it's entertainment purposes only. But we're coming full circle on this because, like, some of those Wall Street bets plays are things that you wouldn't even believe. Like, what do you mean you told me you bought 1,000 contracts of XYZ stock and
Hmm.
this shit went 5,000% and you're now a gajillionaire? And
Yeah,
you were just like, I had a freaking random ticker generator just throw the stock out at me and it worked. It's always something obscure like that. And like hearing that a trader got $2 million from Apex, it literally sounds like a Wall Street Bets type of post. It doesn't
yeah,
sound
it sure
legit.
does, huh?
It doesn't
Yeah,
sound legit.
yeah,
It really doesn't sound legit.
yeah. That's funny. On a quick note, Joe,
Mm,
if for any of our viewers that didn't get a chance to watch episode 3 of Serial Blowups,
yes.
uh, we made a little short recently that that kind of outperformed my expectations. And I mean, I forgot that we had that conversation, but when I played it back, dude, I was laughing my ass off.
Dude, I know. That's pretty funny, dude. That's pretty funny.
So you guys should check out that short and then maybe rewatch the episode 3 if you haven't watched that one yet. It's a good one.
Dude, I don't know what this movie is, but it's really funny that, like, of all places, I happen to, like, on because I don't scroll on social media. I've been, like, very, against. I think I just made the camera move with the hand signal there. You're like, this is weird. That'll do that. But anyways, I don't scroll, but I just came across this like random, reel or whatever you'd call it on Snapchat of all places, and it was Morgan Freeman, and he like walks into a casino and he puts like half of his pension down at a blackjack table, and then his friends come back. And he had just lost a $9,000 bet, and he doesn't have many chips in front of him. And he's like, okay, so like, how much do I have left? And the dealer counts it up, and she's like, all right, your last bet was 9,000 that you lost. She was like, you started with 15,000. Then she's like, and you have, and he only has a few chips, but they must be high dollar chips. Because then she's like, and you have 108,000. And he's just like, okay, I'm done. And he like walks away, and he sits down at the table, turns 15K into 100K. Like, holy shit! Can't imagine that. Can't imagine that. I'd be like, honey.
Well, he was smarter than we were in our hypothetical situation.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Because he walked away. He walked away after like 6x his money, 7x his money. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, man.
I might have to check that one out.
Yeah, I got to find out what movie it is because Morgan Freeman's a great actor, so you can't go wrong. If you know which movie I'm talking about, help me out and put it in the comments, please. But otherwise, man, I think we're good to wrap this up.
Yeah, what do you think? Until the next one. Peace out.
Hell yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you later.
Later.